Hi, welcome to episode 7 of Entrepreneur Tips. And this episode is about empathy. First of all, to address the question of why do I speak a lot about psychology in my videos? Okay, the reason why I speak about psychology is because there's a direct link between psychology and business. There are very many reasons why psychology is extremely useful for business, and business draws so much information from psychology in order to improve itself. For example, we know financially, we know that in financial models that we use today, they come from financial behavior, and financial behavior is again psychology applied to macro level. Okay, for example, theories like John Maynard Keynes theory or the Nash equilibrium. Okay, their basis is on psychology, how people will behave, and we also need to know psychology on a micro level, on a one-to-one level, to understand how we interact with other people, how they behave, how are they going to respond and react, and how to do better relationships, as well as how to build cultures, of course, better cultures in our company, and how to design better products that suit the needs of our customers, products and services to suit them. Okay, we need to know a lot of psychology for that. Now, unfortunately, the information that's available on the business world is very often false. I see it firsthand. I've been studying psychology, different areas of it for at least 15 years. I studied cognitive psychology, and I've studied psychiatry and neuroscience. And I see, I read many articles and many posts, on social media, in books, which are basically false. Okay, so why are they false? Okay, there's two reasons. One reason is because there's a tendency in the business world to create myths and take ideas from psychology and kind of stretch them too much to people who they don't really understand them. So empathy is actually one of those. Today it's a buzzword. Everyone heard that. Empathy is a good thing. So our company has empathy. We have so much empathy. We're so good, which is ironic because then if you see later on I'm going to tell you what empathy is, and then it doesn't actually look so good. To just say that. Okay, it looks worse. But the second reason why psychological information available in business is wrong is because the psychological theories themselves are wrong, and that's been proven today by neuroscience. Okay, and there's a gap today between psychology and neuroscience. Basically, psychology has not merged with neuroscience, and neuroscience has a lot of better new theories about how we behave. Okay, and they're proving all the previous theories wrong. Okay, and psychology itself has a tendency to emphasize so much on emotion, too much on emotion, and people they do have emotion, but okay, how do they use it? And it doesn't know about that. And how do people think? Okay, and psychology hasn't explained well personality. Okay, it's confusing it. So for all these reasons, have lots of false information. Okay, and empathy is one of them. So I'll explain what it is. So interestingly, as I said, empathy, actually the definition, surprisingly, doesn't even come from psychology. The definition of empathy comes from an economist. It comes from Adam Smith, Scottish economist Adam Smith, and he gave the first definition of empathy in his theory of moral sentiments in 1759. Where he says that when we see somebody else being emotional, acting in a certain way, we're also affected as if we're them, and it's almost as if we put ourselves in their shoes. Okay, and he said that, and psychologists picked that up and made the definition of empathy with other things as well. Okay, and in my view on empathy, I like to stick to just that definition. That empathy, this is how I define it. It's just a role reversal. Okay, that's what it is. The role reversal, which is a personality feature, and it's instinctive. We put ourselves in the place of another. Now, all the other things that we say that we do, they're actually a bit more complex. They don't always work well. Just to put yourself in the place of another does not mean you do it well. And there's a lot of traps around it, and there are a lot of problems around it, and it's not very good. For one, it's a very easy way for somebody to be exploited by putting themselves in the position of another because they get affected by it emotionally, and that doesn't lead to good decisions. And all the negatives around empathy have been very well explained by Paul Bloom from the University of Wales in his book of Yale, in his book Against Empathy. And I recommend it. It's a great reading for anyone to read. Okay, where he says, for example, some of the negatives are that when you have empathy, you tend to focus too much on one person as opposed to many people, and more. Now, there's also two types of empathy that have been defined that I agree with. Two types. One is affective empathy and the other is cognitive empathy. Now, affective empathy means that you has also been described as emotional contagion, which means that when somebody is emotional, you also feel a certain set of emotions. Now, some of them might be the same that they have, some of them not, because we're made differently. So we can't always say that we feel the same things that other people feel. We're not made the same as others. And cognitive empathy has been described as the ability to think like how another person thinks. Now, again, they put an emphasis that you will try to think of their emotions, but I think again that's false. That's an over exaggeration of the use of emotions. We can also try and think how the other person thinks, and that's exactly the type of empathy that I find useful, is to try to think how the other person thinks. It's useful for all the previous reasons and strategy as well. Okay. I particularly like this for product design, to use empathy as a guide for how to make better products and better services. Just to give you a very short description of how empathy, I see a lot of products, and I think they have not been designed with empathy. Okay, and why is that a problem? Say there's electronic devices, for example. Okay, you see electronic devices, and you might see they have all these knobs and switches and controls. Okay, and they have on them values like, I don't know, amperes, volts, or something. Say you buy a device like that. And it's not a device. You're not an electrical engineer. It's not an electrical engineering device. And then you look at it and you think, okay, this is not why I want to use this device. I'm not an engineer. How do I use this? Okay, it's very complex. It shows that the person who designed it hasn't thought of things. They've thought of the device, how they would use it themselves, but not how they'd use it how the users would use it. Okay, the users might have been buying this device, say, to it might be a neurostimulation device, and they buy it, for example, to relieve pain. So the right type of controls would be pain reduction. Okay, high, low. Okay, that makes sense because the user bought the device for pain reduction. They didn't buy it to set volts and amperes and read how that works. That doesn't make sense. Okay. So just to close this, I think understanding what cognitive empathy is and how we can use it, especially for startup founders and for entrepreneurs who bring new products to the market, trying to think what users want and why users buy the product and how do they think about it and how do they use it, and design your products around it. Okay, around their way of thinking is the best way to make more successful products and services. So I'll see you soon with more tips. Thank you for watching.